back, and she was able to go, as I recall it, to 4 years to the same high school down in the San Diego area and stuff.
Okay, so you stayed in San Diego?
Yeah, we retired in San Diego there. Then,
Wow.
yeah. My parents were in Minneapolis. We thought about that. Her parents were in San Francisco area. We thought about that, and the San Diego area is really a military, especially Navy retirement area. There's zillions of things down there, and we were really, I'll say, very pleased with our move down there. So, and then like I mentioned to you, I had just had that 2 years of college at the University of Minnesota, and so I enrolled at the San Diego, which was a state college at the time, and I got a degree in general education, a bachelor's, and started teaching. And then education-wise, I continued on and got a master's degree down there at San Diego in education while I was teaching and stuff.
So when you retired from the Navy, what was your rank?
I was a commander.
You was a commander.
Yeah,
and then you went back to school and became a teacher.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And so then I taught there, and then I got a job in the local area at El Cajon High School. I taught there for, I think, 14 years or so. And then we moved. We lived out in the El Cajon area, and the reason we now right after retirement, we were looking for an area that had a good reputation for the high school system. And Grossmont down there at that time did have a real good reputation. I don't know what it is now. I have no reason to think it's still not. But anyway, it was highly regarded. And so we bought a house in that area, and was there for my daughter's 4 years in high school. After that, we moved. Now she's out of college and stuff, and out of high school, excuse me. And was she out of college? I don't remember. But anyway, then we moved over to Coronado. I asked you, do you know the area down there at all? If I say,
Not really.
if I say Del Coronado Hotel, you know.
I think I've heard of it. But
Yeah, okay. Well, there's a bunch of big apartments right south of Del Coronado Hotel that were just being built then, and we bought into these high-rise apartments on the beach. And so we lived there for a number of years.
Right on the beach, huh?
Oh yeah, right on the beach. It was quite nice and stuff. And then at that period, let's see, then I kept working on my master's. I got my master's degree, and then I retired from teaching. Oh, I don't know, 1921, 55, about 1976, something like that. I retired from teaching, and I had already had a Coast Guard license, so where I was allowed to take people out fishing. I could take 6 passengers for hire between San Diego and Cabo San Lucas, Mexico.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Don. Before I let you get past the teaching, were there any stories that you could remember about your time during teaching? I suppose you weren't really in charge of discipline like a vice principal. But,
No, I was not.
Tell me just about the general experience of being a teacher. How did you like that? And
Okay, I certainly shall. That generally I pretty much liked it, with the exception of the, I'm going to say, lack of parental and, in a sense, almost public support for teachers as a profession. It's unfortunate. I don't think they get the, what should I say, the credit they deserve, because a lot of them are not deserving. I'm certain of that too. But the teachers, I feel, get blamed for so many things that are wrong in our educational system that are not part of what I term is the educational. To seeing that the kids get nourishment. Now, the school system, should the school system be responsible for providing a kid that doesn't get any breakfast at home because his parents, he doesn't have any, or they're on drugs or stuff like this? It's a tragic situation. That
Right.
I can remember students coming to class, and this one girl, she'd just about every morning have like a quart bottle of Pepsi. And I said, do you really think, this is stuff, that much of that stuff is good for you? And her comment, this is my breakfast. Well, now for a growing teenager to have a damn bottle of Pepsi for breakfast, it says something about something. I'm not sure what it is even, but.
Sad.
So that is one of the things that I thought of. With regard to discipline, now I was an ex-military officer and our vice principal was an ex-military officer. And years later he told me, we got to be pretty good friends, that he said, Don, he said, when you came and interviewed for this job, he said, I know you got the job because he didn't, as I recall, he wasn't even in on the interviews and stuff. But he said, I didn't think you were going to make it. And his reasoning was, I said, why? He said, because you were too used to, when you were teaching, now I've been a flight instructor and a math instructor and in the Navy, but the students in a Navy are a little different than high school students. Yeah. And he said, I didn't think you were going to make it. Well, I guess I made it. I didn't get kicked out or anything, and I worked at it for 15 years or so. But that was my concern, is that the motivation of the students is kind of lacking.
Yeah.
And how to inspire them, I'm not real sure what the answer is. There was a program, PSA, Pacific Southwest Airlines, used to be a small airline that ran here on the coast and stuff. In fact, if you recall that far back, they had these stewardesses that were in the plane. They wore shorts, and the real little advanced for the times then, but they put skirts on before they got off the plane. But on the plane, they wore shorts. Now they had long stockings and stuff. But they were always little Playboy stuff that looked real good, real good. But PSA was offering a program at that time that a student, if in high school, maintained an A average from when he was a freshman, they would offer him flight training. Now, to me, I told kids about this, and to me it was, Lord, an opportunity that for but if you start trying to talk to a ninth grader, a freshman, about an A in class for 4 years, well, 4 years when they're 13, hell, I might be dead in 4 years. They can't think that far ahead. And the motivation wasn't there. There were many programs. The Navy offered programs out on Point Loma with the research community in researching with dolphins, electronics, and they would offer summer programs for, I'll say, high school juniors and seniors to come and work in their labs up there for either minimum or no money. But God, the training would have been. But to get kids interested in this, summer they had other things in mind. And that was my only disappointment, really, in teaching. That was my disappointment.
Well, they all weren't like that. You must have had some that were. All kids aren't like that. You must have had some that were driven.
I'm sorry, what's more?
Oh, I say all high school kids were not like that. You must have had one or two that were really driven.
Oh no, I had some that were. To me, I haven't kept in touch with them for too many years, but I did for many years. One of the boys who really inspired me was totally blind. He was there, and he was completely blind, as I recall. And I can't remember. There's two terms for blindness. If they were blind at birth and got blind later, because it's a big difference in how they can adapt to the world. Right. And this boy, but he had one of these canes, and he was a high school student now, and he was confident enough that he could go downtown to San Diego by himself on the bus because he had things memorized well enough. He was in one of my electronics classes, and he would solder, and he would solder joints together by holding. He could recognize when we told him what an object was and what the size of it was, and if he had to solder these two things together, by his touch he could feel it, and he'd put the soldering iron close enough to his fingers that he could feel the heat from the iron, and then learned to take the iron away when the solder joint was made. The things he did was just, Ray Brunk, his name was. I remember Ray real well. But that's inspiring to see somebody like that. And,
yeah.
But as far as the everyday classroom routine and teaching, there was not too much motivation. I guess maybe because part of it, when I got into beyond high school stage where I was no whiz, but beyond that, I had a motive just about every school that I went to. Flight training, certainly. You didn't want to screw up in something like that because of course, the results were you were kicked out. With regard to that, when I started flight training, there were, as I recall, 120 kids, 120 young men in my platoon. When we graduated, there were 13 of us. There were that many got, well, the term is washed out. Yeah. And a lot of it was not their fault. I mentioned to you about this surplus of officers and pilots that they had. See, these guys were part of it. If you did anything wrong in the flight training program when I went through, it was rough. It was rough. I can remember I got a down once, and this is on one of the flight tests that I failed this one test. And I'll say, can't tell you the real reason. I mentioned to you my wife came down to Texas there to visit me, and I was staying up late and stuff. I went out so that I wouldn't miss a flight. I went out and sat down by the plane. I knew I was going to be flying when the instructor came, and I sat down by the wheel, and I fell asleep. And he was looking for me around the ready room, but he didn't ever come out to the plane. So I missed that flight. Oh boy, I sweat that, whether or not that was going to do it for me. Because little teeny things like that is, I won't say what they were looking for, but they had to get rid of some of them, and so they were looking for any excuse to do so. Wow. But I lucked out on that one. And then I did something not up to par on one of my flights, but you're always given, if you fail the first one, that you're given a second one. If you pass the second one, then you're given a third one. And if you pass or fail, that determines what your outcome is. Because they know in any program that anyone can have a bad day. And so that was...
because you had enough good days, you made it.
What's that?
You had enough good days, you
made
it.
Yeah, that's right. But you were asking, see, about education. My goals when I was in training was a lot different from when I was in high school. In high school, I was no whiz. I averaged everything. But later on, I put a little more effort into it. Let's say it that way. Your priorities change.
Yeah, you mature too. Yeah.
Okay, where are we?
You retired from teaching.
I retired from teaching. Okay, 76, 77. Okay, I had while I was teaching and stuff, I was working on a Coast Guard license to take passengers. That when I was in the Navy and stuff. Now I've been the officer of the deck and conned 6,000-ton ships and all that sort of stuff. But that doesn't license you to take a passenger for money from one place to the other. Yeah. And I met a guy that had a couple of boats, and so I got this. Got this Coast Guard license, and then I would take out it was sports fishing is all it was. And we would work in the San Diego area, and then I would go down, take the boat down to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, 800-900 miles down the coast, and we would fish down there.
How long of a trip would that be?
How long? It depends on that. If you that we would cruise, let's say at 15 knots, 900, 60 hours. If you went straight through, but we would often dawdle and go into different places. I had some nice experiences in Magdalena Bay and some of the other bays along the way there. We would dawdle because these were all, quote, pleasure trips most of the time.